Serious, what's your best story about listening to a gut feeling? I was a birthday party princess in college. Dress up as a Disney character. Sing some songs. Help with cake. Paint faces. Typical party stuff. I get called to a party that began at 8 p.m. Unusual but not unheard of in our industry. A lot of Spanish speaking families party well into the night. But I pull up down the street, princesses don't drive, and begin walking to the house. Dressed as Sleeping Beauty. My party box of supplies in hand. But when I saw the house I knew immediately something was wrong. There were no lights on. No cars. No balloons. But against my better judgment I knocked on the door. This super creepy looking guy in his mid-50s answers. In a dirty shirt and jeans. And the first thing he says is the party's around back. I took one look at this guy and booked it as fast as I could while holding a box. Wearing a ball gown and being mildly crippled to begin with. I got into my car. Locked the doors. Floored it to a 7-11 and called my boss. The party never called demanding to know where their princess was. No one asked for their deposit back. My boss called police non-emergency but I don't know if anything was ever done. I'm 100% sure there was no party in that house. There was a party planned. But the bad kind. It happened in the worst way. I was working with a patient whose cancer was in full remission. She looked amazing and was telling me about the trips she and her husband was planning. Paris. Africa. etc. All the places she couldn't go to because of kids. Military. And now cancer. But now, with nothing holding her back, she was going to take the world by storm. It hit me. And it hit me hard. As we were setting up her follow-up appointments she asked me if I was okay. I said gas and she laughed me off. 1 week later she died in the hospital. Her cancer returned and in record time destroyed her to the point that she was bleeding out internally. They were going through so many bags of blood that the commander of the hospital told them to stop. I will never forget the look on her face as she dreamt of the future that I knew would never happen and the feeling it gave me. When he was a young adult, my dad went to Madrid to stay with a friend. There was sudden change and they couldn't pick him up from the train station. He had to sleep rough in the station. After being mistaken for a prostitute twice, 2 customs officers showed up and started showing my dad their badges and telling him to go with them. Already unsure because they weren't in uniform, my dad followed them anyway. They were putting his stuff in the back of an unmarked car and beckoning him to get in. All the time reassuring him and showing their badges. When he saw a police officer walking down the side of the road, feeling that something was really wrong, he went up to the police officer and asked him to help get his stuff out of the car. The police officer went over to the 2 men, got the stuff out the car and talked to them and got them to show him their papers. Turns out they were fakes and the officer took dad back to the police station after arresting the 2 men and allowed him to stay the night there. Dad got back with his friend and we all lived happily ever after. In high school around everybody's birthday, all their friends would go all out. Bringing balloons, brownies, gifts, you name it. It was just a fun tradition the whole school partook in to help with stress and whatnot. Fast forward to my birthday and as per usual I was given balloons, cake, funny letters from my good friends. All of a sudden I felt like someone was watching me and I turn around to see a girl in our class staring at me. I walk over and just start a conversation with her, asking her when her own birthday was, and made a mental note. I had such a string-out feeling that I needed to do something for her on her birthday even though this was our first time talking. I knew this girl was very shy, a little strange, and had recently been given a lot of crap for coming out to a few people at our school. So I figured her birthday might not be as recognized or participated in as maybe mine was. Fast forward to her own birthday, and I brought her the biggest balloon I could find and some baked goods. As classes went on, I soon realized that was the only thing anyone got her that day. I caught her in the parking lot to say happy birthday one last time before heading to practice and she seemed happy and normal. Fast forward to about 4 months later I got chatting to her again. She pulled me aside and told me that for the last year or so she had been planning to kill herself on her birthday. I was in shock. She told me that the balloon and goodies showed her enough of a brighter side to life to hold off and rethink things. Since a stranger seemed to care enough about a special day for her, I still can't believe it. So my friend and I were walking around at like 2 o'clock in the morning playing Pokemon Go when it had first came out. It was very quiet and we were just talking to each other when all of a sudden a very loud truck came down the road and drove past us. Then all of a sudden I just got this feeling in my gut that told me to run. I told my friend what I was feeling, and he immediately told me to run. So we ran behind a gas station parking lot and hid behind a dumpster for a second. And sure enough, that same truck had turned around at the light and came back to the parking lot and even went behind the store, in their truck, looking for us. They were in and out, but it was still one of the most chilling feelings I've had before. During a family vacation in Yellowstone, my parents sent me and my siblings out of our rented cabin so they could be alone, in hindsight, to do things I'd rather not think about. There was a small gas station type of store by the main lodge, so they handed me some cash and told us to go out and get ice cream. Some relevant information: there were 2 ways to the main lodge from our cabin: a scenic lakeside walk, or a roadside trek. As the eldest sibling, I was in charge of the younger 2 and the ice cream mission. Normally, I'm the kind of person who picks the scenic route, but something that day told me to walk the not as pretty road. My siblings were disappointed, but I pulled rank and we walked the road to the store. On our way back from getting ice cream, we passed by a cabin next to ours along the road, where the current renter was sitting on the porch. He yelled over at us to be careful and get inside not 15 minutes earlier, when we would have been walking to get ice cream. He had seen a decent sized grizzly bear walking on the lake right where Wood would have walked. I've trusted my gut ever since then. When I was about 9-10 years old, I used to water my neighbor's plants for her when she was on vacation. Normally my older brother and I went together, but the previous day we got into a giant argument turned into water fight while doing the task, so my mom decided we would go alone on alternate days for the rest of her trip. Now my neighbor had a lot of flowers both in front of and I'm back of her house, and tiny 10-year-old me had to drag a hose between the two. It wasn't an easy task. I started by dragging the hose from the side yard to the front. I noticed the backsliding screen door was in the center, where I thought it was usually to the side. I shrugged it off and got the hose to the front door. Then, all of a sudden, had a gut feeling something was off and I needed to get out of there. I dropped the hose and went back to my house next door, separated by about an acre of heavily wooded area. I told my mom something was off and I was too scared to finish watering. She brushed me off and we went about our day, telling me we could finish the task together later. She thought I was just too tired or lazy to do it all on my own. I told her that it wasn't true and I got a weird feeling over there. But anyways, we decided we would return that evening when it cooled off. When we returned that evening, the back window was broken and my neighbor's house had been robbed. One of the large flower pots was now knocked over, where it hadn't been that morning. The screen door was now off to the side again. That means the burglars were probably inside while I was outside watering the plants. We were both terrified and called the police, of course. My mom now believes my gut feelings. I've told this multiple times at this point, but my mom and dad went to visit some friends in Thunder Bay, Ontario. The friends introduced my parents to their daughter and her boyfriend. Well, the entire time my parents were visiting, my mom kept getting this really bad feeling about the boyfriend. He made her so uncomfortable for some reason that my parents actually ended up leaving early because my mom kept getting such a weird vibe from the guy. Well, a few weeks after their visit, the boyfriend killed my parents' friends, their daughter and other kid, and then himself. So my mom was definitely right. Here's a satisfying one from today. I am a vet. Gave a vaccine to a toy breed dog today. Has had this vaccine before with no problems. Immediately after giving the shot, he just looked slightly off to me. Maybe just more quiet than usual. All vitals normal, but just not quite his typical happy self. My gut said this is not right. I asked the owner to wait 15 minutes before leaving to make sure no vaccine reaction. 5 minutes later he had an anaphylactic seizure in my lobby. Was ready for it. Immediate emergency treatment for anaphylaxis. 1 hour later barking his full head off incessantly in my treatment room to tell me he's ready to go home. I was friends with this girl in high school and we helped each other out with our depression. Well, one day she just seemed off and distant and I tried really hard to get through to her. All day was like that, then we went home and my texts weren't being answered. I got this really bad feeling and called my dad and told him I thought she was going to kill herself. He works with her dad and he told him. Dad races home and finds her mid-suicide attempt. She'd never attempted before and never told anyone she had felt suicidal. I just couldn't shake the feeling. I'm glad I stuck with it. Was taking my dog to the park and was stuck at a light. I live in a busy city and people drive like sh. The light turned green and people began walking across the crosswalk. As I pulled out to take my turn, I felt like I needed to brake and just went with it. Right as I do that, a white SUV flies through their red light. They almost hit the people walking across and come within inches of my car. I laid on my horn and all I could see was this middle-aged woman looking up from her phone. This all happened within about a second, but I still hate that woman and her face is burned into my brain. She could have killed the people walking or hit my car and tossed my dog. Don't strap her in because it is literally a 1-minute drive. These young kids and their phones. It's ridiculous. That old lady right before getting in the car. I was joyriding around with 2 friends in the Shenandoah National Forest. We saw that one road was open which had always been gated, so we decided to go down it to explore. We drove probably 10 miles down this road, which seemed to be surprisingly well traveled considering its gate is locked 99% of the time. The road dead ended and we got out to look around. It was obvious someone had been there with fresh tire tracks around. The ground was pretty disturbed as well. The 3 of us split up to look around more. I came across a fire pit with a few makeshift benches. It was obvious the fire had just been quickly snuffed out. I started to get that gut feeling. Then I noticed next to the fire pit a stick drove into the ground. On top of the stick rested a lit cigarette. At this point my stomach had pretty much dropped out of my a-hole. I even drew my pistol and started to quickly, but not in a panicked way, make my way back to the truck. It seemed to me that someone was hiding from us. I get back to the vehicle and my 2 friends had also drawn their pistols and we didn't even need to say anything to each other. We all felt the same thing, which was a need to GTFO of that hollow as fast as possible. We haven't been back since. Turns out a short time later a man went missing in that same general area. To this day he has never been found despite many search attempts. Name is Robert Fitzgerald. I think some people were hiding out there. Maybe making meth. Maybe running from the law. I've also heard a very similar story from another Redditor who confirmed it happened in the same area and same time frame. This just happened today. Context: I live in a corrupt third world country and police here are more of extorters than protectors. I was supposed to head somewhere today, and as I was taking my wallet I thought maybe this is too much to have on me. So I left most of the cash home. Cut to a few hours later. I'm walking along a suspiciously barren path between 2 sort of police stations, listening to music through my earphones. Some guy then taps me on my shoulder and points to a gate where a policeman with an AK is motioning for me to come over. I didn't hesitate because I thought it would be an issue about me taking pictures as I had my phone out. I head over. Quite calm. What's your name? My name. Alright. Get in there, he says while pointing to a shed that's beside the gate. He tells me to sit down when we get in. Do you know it's illegal to have earphones on around these areas? WTF peg. At this point I totally know how this will go. Since it's not my first time being apprehended. They basically start talking about how they'll put you in a cell and you'll have to wait till the weekday to get your case heard. Anyways. Of course he asks for money. I tell him I don't have much. He tells me to chuck my wallet and show him. I do and he takes most of what I have. So yay. I got less extorted out of me than I would have if I didn't listen to my gut. WTF peg. They're not even being that creative with their excuses.